There was no artillery boom, no fighter jets, no armored vehicles advancing. But in less than a minute, an infantry group collapsed in the open. Fast, silent, and barely visible from the ground. It all started with one simple thing. They stopped in the wrong place. In the distance, a Ukrainian sniper was waiting. Not waiting for a target, but waiting for habit. Because on the modern battlefield, habit is the easiest weakness to detect. What followed wasn't a dramatic firefight. It was a slow but steady collapse triggered by exposure, timing, and human reactions under pressure. And that's what makes this incident far more alarming than mere casualties. The terrain was desolate, the grass was tall, the shadows were broken, the light was daylight. To the human eye, it looked safe enough to pause. To the thermal sensor, it was a brightly lit stage. Body heat doesn't hide. It penetrates camouflage. It accumulates when people stand close together. It remains visible even when someone stands still. When the group stopped to reposition, their heat signatures began to overlap. And in modern observation systems, a stationary heat signature is the most stable target. The sniper didn't need to search for anyone. The target was already on. What made this incident different wasn't the first shot. It was the fact that the actual battle had begun long before. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones had been observing the route for a long time. Not to attack, but to learn patterns. Where the infantry typically slowed down, where they felt safe enough to stop. How long they tended to gather before moving again. The terrain was mapped not as a location, but as a recurring behavior. When the Russian group entered the open area, they didn't enter an attack zone. They entered a predictable pattern. But in a war with modern sensors, all of that can turn into a target marking signal. Pause too long, lock on position. Stand too close, heat buildup. Hasty reaction, conspicuous movement. A sniper doesn't destroy a unit with sheer volume of fire. He destroys its decision-making structure. In a matter of seconds, the group is no longer a tactical unit, but individuals reacting independently. And once coordination breaks down, it's just time. This incident isn't just about one group being hit by precision fire. It's about changing the fundamental rules of survival on the front lines. How can infantry move? If their body heat is always visible, how can they stop? If stopping means lock on, how can they think under pressure? If every reaction triggers detection. Today, a single sniper with thermal optics can disrupt a unit faster than a short artillery barrage, not because of its destructive power, but because of its ability to force human error. And if this pattern continues to repeat itself, perhaps what we're seeing isn't an isolated incident, but rather the beginning of a new phase for the entire front line. A battlefield that no longer awaits major battles, because constant observation is enough to bring down an opponent. No one immediately knew where the shots were coming from. Instinct took over logic. One man dropped to the ground. Another sprinted and then stopped. Two men stood still for too long trying to locate the direction of the threat. And that's where the next mistake occurred. The sudden movement created a new thermal contrast. Bodies that had previously been clustered together were now scattered, but even easier to pick out individually. In the distance, through the thermal optics, they were all clearly visible. Not as people, but as panicked, hot silhouettes. The sniper took his time. He didn't chase the target. He waited for the slowest decision. The radio began to crackle. Orders overlapped. No one saw the enemy, but everyone knew they were visible. Some tried to retreat. Others tried to spread out. Someone signaled to stay low. But the open terrain offered no real options. There were no walls, no trenches, there are no thick shadows, just the ground and the ticking of time. In situations like this, units typically rely on one thing: the direction of the threat. But without a clear direction, coordination degenerates into individual reactions. And when units stop acting as a whole, collapse becomes a matter of sequence. What we see on the battlefield today didn't just happen suddenly. It's the result of a major shift in the way Ukrainian soldiers are trained over the past decade. After the conflict escalated in 2014, many units of the Ukrainian armed forces began undergoing NATO-influenced training with instructors from the United States Army and other Western countries. But the most important change wasn't the weapons, nor was it the equipment. The biggest change was the way they think about combat. In the modern Western approach, commanders no longer detail every step, they simply set broad objectives. How to achieve them is left to small units in the field. This means soldiers are trained to think for themselves, to decide for themselves, to adapt for themselves. In a war full of sensors, drones, and real-time surveillance, speed of thought is often more important than firepower. Furthermore, modern training always combines multiple eyes into one system: drones in the air, observers on the ground, snipers in concealed positions, and constantly updated observation data. The goal isn't to attack, but to understand. They study patterns, movement rhythms, stopping habits, how humans react under pressure. In other words, the target isn't just enemy positions, but enemy behavior. Small units are also trained to act autonomously. They can move without waiting for lengthy orders, change plans mid-situation, or exploit enemy mistakes in a matter of seconds. This is why modern operations often appear quiet from the outside. There isn't always a major clash. Sometimes it's just long observation, and then one small moment that's perfectly exploited.